Hello everybody, my name is Michael, and in today's video what we're going to be doing is this right here. So if that looks interesting to you guys, please carry on and watch the video. And also one more thing before we get into the video, if you enjoy what I do here, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. It really helps me out and lets me know you enjoy the video. But with all that out of the way, let's get into that video. Okay, so we're going to be starting off with Reek here as our first miniature, and what I've done is I've primed him in grey here. This is uniform grey, so a bluish grey and sort of a mid-tone grey as well. And I'm coming in with a lighter grey, in this case company grey, which is a more whiter grey, and I'm going to use this to do the highlights of the miniature. I want to use that original grey that we primed it up with as a base colour essentially, and using this as a highlight because I want to have Reek's skin all gnarly looking, so it looks like it's been through the torture and the pain, and giving some of those interesting sort of skin tones that we can see there's a bit of mistreating and malnourishment in there. So coming in with the grey, and then we're going to put some regular skin tones on top to show that horribleness that has been used against him to make him talk while he's been in capture. So now we have that grey as a highlight. I'm going to come in with a skin tone here. This is going to be a very light skin tone, as I want to keep that on with the highlights. Now essentially what I'm doing is having this thinned down a bit, and I'm going over the highlighted areas essentially. It's sort of a mixture in between giving a bit of overall coverage but more focusing towards the highlighted areas rather than that. So what I should say is I'm leaving minimal room between the last layer of highlights that we did and this layer here. So almost they're nearly overlapping, but there's sort of like maybe like a millimeter gap between our highlights and our skin tone that we're applying here. So it's a very minor transition, but it will show up as we apply our techniques here to show that skin up. I just wanted there to be that layer of transition from that grey into our nice skin tone that we've got here. So of course what we want to do is come in and pick out all of those nice areas we highlighted, leaving just a little slither on sort of every corner so we still can see that light grey that we did in the previous step. So now that we have that complete, what we're going to do is we are going to use a wash. In this case I'm going to be using a Brighton Flesh shade here, and this is going to really change the miniature as you can see immediately as we apply that wash. It's giving us all the effect of all of the colours that we have layered up. And the benefit of it as it starts drying, because we've used greys as our base tone, it's going to interact nicely with that wash and come out really sort of ugly and nasty. At least that's the hope behind it anyway, rather than if we had started with a flesh tone then moved up with progressively highlighted colors of flesh tone, it would feel too natural and I think it would just look like highlighted skin. So I want to go with something ugly and nasty to really show that horrific treatment that Reek has had on him. So that's why I'm going with the greys, and then went with the skin tone over top and then applying the wash over top of that, so you can see that there's real ugliness in that skin. Then once we have that skin wash all completely dry, we're going to move on now to his raggedy clothing, if you can call it that he's wearing around him. And this is just going to be a nice simple dark brown that we're going to highlight up with another brown on top of that, making it super nice and simple. I just want them to be super ragged and scraggly over the entirety of the piece. Now that we have his rags that he's wearing painted up, what I'm going to do now is paint in his hair. So for this I'm going to start off with a darker grey than what we had for our base colour, and I want to just give this a nice overall coat. I'm going to make it, hopefully try to give off the effect of him having some like a real malnourished greyish hair. I want it to look sort of like scraggly and ugly and make it look like the colours sort of like washing out of his hair. Hopefully that's what I'm going to try to go for anyway. So then with giving that lighter grey progressively highlights onto his hair, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in with a brown wash and I'm going to give those two areas a wash. So I want to give his scraggly clothes a wash, and I'm also going to give his hair a wash too, because I want it to have a slight bit of colour in there. Hopefully that's the effect I want to give on. So I'm going to be a little bit lighter of the colour I'm going to apply to his hair. I just want to try and make it look like it's faded out, and sort of giving that like raggedy sort of look, but that's why I've gone with the greys to the white, or not quite white, but like light grey, and then applying the wash over top, so hopefully it gives off that his hair colour is fading. Then once that is complete, we have finished with Theon, and we are now going to move on to Ramsay Snow, or Ramsay Bolton here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with some just sort of general skin tone. I'm going with sort of a neutral tone here. Now for this, I'm definitely making sure that I go with a base tone of just the regular good coverage of a skin tone colour as the base. So not going with like we did with Reek there, where we started off the grey and we're highlighting, we're giving this a full on regular base coat. Then once we have that complete, what we're doing is we're coming in with a lighter skin tone colour, and what I'm going to do is pick out the highlighted areas. Now with this too, I'm also going to be a little bit erratic with how I'm going to place on the highlights. I'm going to have different sort of brush pressures, because in the books of A Song of Ice and Fire, Ramsay is said and described as having sort of gnarly looking skin with like patches of lights and darker modeled, like his face is sort of a little bit messed up and not taken well care of. So to try and emulate that, I'm just using different hardness and softness of the brush and the highlights to give it a sort of slight variation. Then once we have that done, I'm going to come in with a dark brown, and I want to use that as the base color for Ramsay's hair, as I'm going with the book version, as this is a miniature clearly sculpted after the book version of Song of Ice and Fire, rather than the look of Ramsay in Game of Thrones, where he has really dark black hair and sort of as a skinny, like good looking guy. As you can see, Ramsay here is a really like big built dude who looks like really scary and intimidating, so trying to use the way that it's described as a book as my inspiration for colouring this miniature. Then once we have that complete, we're going to go with just a nice simple black grey here. This is almost a black, but not quite a black. I want to have it so I can darken it down just a little bit, but it's not going to be completely pitch black. So going with a black grey here is perfect for all of his underclothes area. I just want to keep it nice and dark. I'm not going to go anything crazy with his colours here. I want to, the Boltons are a like really bad group of people, or bad house in their terms, and I want to try and reflect that in the colours, so keeping the colours all sort of muted and neutral. So coming in with nice darks as the underlayer for that. As well as that too, I also want to paint in the fur collar that he has around his neck as well. So now that we have his underclothes done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with a gunmetal now, and this is of course to do the metallic areas. Now I did say just in the last step that I was also going to paint in the fur cloak around him in the dark off grey black color as well, and I'm actually going to do this in the step just after doing all the metallic areas. I thought it'd be a bit of a pain if I accidentally got any of the metallics in the wrong areas. As well as that, I just wanted to leave that step out and do it afterwards, so I'm just going to skip over that step rather than showing you. I told you in the step to use it with the colour to save you some time. Whereas me, I was sort of figuring out the colour scheme as I was going along, and I know I wanted it to be dark, but I sort of forgot about it when I was moving on to the metallics here. So you'll see it in the next step, it already being completed and highlighted up with just some slight lighter greys. So one thing I also did in that step off camera that I said I was doing around that fur cloak is I was also doing the boots and the belt on the miniature. Now this is just the exact same colours that I use for Reek's rags that he's wearing around him, so no crazy colours there, so I thought I would just leave that step out and tell you as I'm applying a wash onto the entirety of the miniature. Now this is going everywhere except for the face, of course we want to leave that area alone, but everywhere is now getting a complete black wash. So all of the browns, the metal, and just all of those dark greys that we have on there, giving a complete wash in a known oil in this case, but a black wash, and making sure of course that we're avoiding any pooling where we don't want it to be as we start moving on to some of these next steps there. So I thought it would be just easy to tell you in the step as I'm applying the wash that I've painted in the belts, the buckles and the boots in that step when I was doing that fur cloak, to save you some time, as well as that just knowing that it's just simply the colours that we use for Reek's rags. Then once we have that wash completely dry, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in with a pink colour, and this is because I'm going to be following the A Song of Ice and Fire book series house colour rather than the Bolton's colour from Game of Thrones, which is more sort of dark blacks and reds. House Bolton actually has pinks and reds. I'm going with more of the pink here, so this is going to look super bright and I guess like gaudy as we're applying this, but trust me, we're going to mute this down and make it look a little bit more sort of natural, I guess is the term. I'm just trying to make it look a little bit more regular, like these are clothing they're wearing rather than crazy, like garishly bright pink cloaks on them. So what we're doing is we're starting off with a nice just straight up pink here as the base color of the cloak. Now we have the base color of the cloak established. What I'm going to do is come in with an even brighter pink. Now if you don't have an even brighter pink, mixing in a little bit of white with your pink will of course brighten it right up. And what I am doing now is I am doing the highlighting steps. It's got these nice folds in the miniature, as well as sort of hitting a lot of the edges. But what I'm going to be doing, rather than giving it a nice smooth highlight, I'm actually going to come around and just sort of stiffle it up. I want to have sort of randomness in the texture of the cloak and give off, like, the whole reason why House Bolton has the pink clothing is because of course it's supposed to represent like a flayed skin and flesh that they're wearing, and you know the books theorize that there could be actual flesh on their cloaks. So I want to give off that sort of vibe by having it, rather than being cleanly highlighted up, by stippling it, and we apply it to, it's going to look a little patchy and uneven, so hopefully it'll give off the texture of something not quite right, and giving the effect off like that it could be potentially be skin, but it's, in this case for me, it's just their clothing that's sort of a little bit ragged and showing off that unnerving look to try and imitate skin of their fallen enemies. Then once we have that complete, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with another wash, and this one here is going to be a red wash, and this is going to really hopefully give it that darkened down look. This red I'm using is Caribou Crimson. This is quite a dark red wash, and that's to hopefully give off the effect that, you know, it's just going to mute everything down in terms of like shading it as well, but hopefully just bring that down and make it look that unnerving, not quite sure if it's skin or not on the cloaks that they are wearing. Hopefully that's the intended effect as well. As well as that too, I'm also applying it sort of like haphazardly all over the piece, and making some areas sort of a little bit more globbed on than others, and trying to get that textured effect. So in terms of this one, when we're watching it pooling, I'm not worrying too much about it if it's pooling in uneven spots. I'm more just worried that everything's running on to areas where I don't want it to, like the metallic areas and their clothing, to sort of mix in and merge with that. I'm just being a little bit careless with it on the back to try and give it an uneven look. And then once we have that complete, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out a nice shining silver, and this of course is a nice bright silver, and I want to highlight up all of the metallic area. So going with a nice smooth highlight over these areas. I'm not worried about stippling this time. I don't want it to be sort of like jagged or beaten up armor. I want them to be nice and shining in terms of the way that Ramsey's standing here. So just going with some nice smooth highlights over the areas, making sure I'm using the edge of my brush to catch all of those points, and it's just a matter of going around the entirety of the model and picking out all of those nice sharp edges with this nice shining silver. But with that, we are finished painting up the two miniatures. So what we're going to do is we are going to go into the glamour shots now and see our two miniatures all painted up. And there you have it. There is our two miniatures completed of Ramsay and Reek from the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game. So I hope this video has been helpful for you guys, whether you want to follow along with what I did here, or you just want to use this video as some inspiration in painting up your own miniatures. So with all that said guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you all in the next video.